I have been moving between different countries a couple of times already. 4 times to be exact. I was born in post-Soviet Yerevan. Later, when my parents got a stable job offer, they moved to Russia. Later, we moved to the Baltics, where I went to the high school. And finally, when I wanted to study architecture, I decided to move to Spain. Which means that from quite early on, the idea of belonging to one fixed place or one reality was quite questionable for me. But if you would ask me 15 years ago, I would never think that I would have more than even one home. But what I did think at the time was that moving to a new place means a new beginning, some sort of a reset. New place, new home, new friends. But from my personal experience, it was never about a reset. It was more about adaptation and constant learning. Sometimes it's hard to adapt, sometimes it's quite easy. For example, moving the first time, I remember there was no urgent need to learn a new language because in the Baltics, people do speak and understand Russian. But moving to Spain did cause a bit of more work to do. I remember deciding to learn Castellano language a bit in advance in order to know a couple of words. But only moving to the place, I realized that there was actually a second official language that I didn't even know about. So I think it is about constant adaptation. And I truly believe that architecture operates in exactly the same way. We often tend to think of buildings as static objects, but they are in a constant evolution and change. They are being adapted or restored if something is broken. They are being extended when the current layout is not efficient enough, or being demolished when we can't find new uses to it. I will show you what I mean. Let's take a look at the Temple of Augustus. It was built in the 1st century BC in the Roman colony of Barcino, and once it was a central religious and political space. But after the collapse of the Roman Empire, some uses disappeared and some new needs emerged. But instead of being demolished, the temple was absorbed into the new urban fabric of today's Barcelona, which probably in this map we can't even distinguish where is the temple. Houses were built around it, walls incorporated its columns. For centuries, people lived around it without even knowing it was there. They used its structure to form their everyday life. So somehow once a central Roman forum became someone's private and domestic space. But now, what if reuse and adaptation is not only about preserving what exists, but letting it evolve in order to stay more connected to it? Sometimes it means building onto it, adding new layers, new meanings. We had this happening for centuries in Hahpat Monastery. It was founded in 976 AD by the patronage of Queen Khosravanush, but it was never designed as one complete system or object. It evolved during time, step by step, starting from the main church of Surpnashan, later extending to another chapel. A library and scriptorium were added by the 12th century. By the 13th, a place for education, a refectory where people shared common food, the Hamasas building for people together, the bell tower, the chapel for more intimate and devotional space, and finally the fortress that could protect the monastery. So each element responded to a certain need throughout the necessities of time, not in one fixed time period. This monastery was not preserved because it became a museum one day, or it was added to UNESCO World Heritage Sites, which is also important, but because people kept finding ways to use it. And because of that, until today, we stay emotionally connected to it. And there is something essential here, I think. Architecture is not just about space or form, it's about experience, it's about emotions it can provoke. Sometimes we enter to one building and we like it. We can read its materials, its textures, We could feel how the light comes in. And we really want to go back in those buildings again and again. But some of the buildings we forget the next day. So it is this physical connection that creates meanings. Now, let's have a look at Lori. The province looks like this today, but it was shaped through some sequence of historical events that happened in the past. One of them being the earthquake in 1988. Around 25,000 buildings were damaged or destroyed. The population of Lori dropped dramatically since the 90s. Because of that, many villages here are occupied only seasonally. In cities like Vanadzor, industrial areas marked in blue are still occupying 7% of the territory, with most of the industries being not in use. But at the same time, construction costs continue to rise, resources are limited, and big-scale developments are very difficult to sustain. So what if instead of trying to build from scratch, we try to reread the existing places like we have? Probably you know that Kirovakan once was one of the major industrial hubs in Armenia. It was known for its chemical production, textile manufacturing, and machine building industries. Imagine, thousands of people worked here. But not only those people who work here, their families and friends. Maybe your parents or grandparents also worked in those places, and you heard some stories of them being told of how they met there, or how they needed to substitute a friend, or how it took them 2 or 3 buses to get to the place. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, most of the industries were shut down. Those people who once had worked here, they didn't, and they had to move to other places in search for ones. Today we have those structures abandoned, but abandonment does not mean no value. Not only those places contain traces of memories, but they also offer highly adaptable and flexible spaces. From the architectural point of view, its repetitive structural grids, the trusses that support big spans, the whole scale of this infrastructure allows it to be very easily changed into more domestic and social uses. Now let's have another example. If we move more towards the southeast, on the edge between the private houses and the forest, we would find the Artec summer camps. Once it was one of the favorite destinations for the students to do hikings, to do painting classes, to participate in chess tournaments. But today, those structures stay silent in the nature, completely abandoned, without any touch. Imagine not reading those spaces as separate elements, but as one continuous landscape that starts from the city, goes up the slope into the forest. Take a look at the Central Stadium that is still in use, but in a much lower intensity. Imagine that it could extend more informal sport activities towards the center, connecting with it, then introducing a more adaptable and accessible pathways along the slope, connecting highest and the lowest parts of the city, maybe introducing some viewpoints and platforms along the way, and finally arriving to the old structures that now could contain more social, educational, and cultural uses. Learning how to care about what is already there, trying to find new and meaningful ways how to connect with it, this is some of the most contemporary architecture today is about. And this is why many places around the world have been transformed into something completely new today, like the train railways into parks, like the High Line in New York, or factories into biggest museums like the Tate Modern, or this project, Sesc Pompeia in Brazil. It was once just an old factory, no iconic form, no historic architecture to preserve. But instead of being demolished, Lina Bobardi asked a different question. What could people do here today? So what she did were reforming the existing naves of the factory and then also introducing 2 concrete tower buildings that could host more specific uses like swimming pools, auditorium, and etc. So today, in those places, people are sunbathing in the exterior. There are festivals happening. The interior spaces are converted into exposition areas, civic centers, workshop areas, more private zones. When I look at this image, the first thing I think of is my grandpa. I don't know about you, but I think he would love to go back into the factory that he worked for so many years just to play a game of chess. I think how beautiful it would be for different generations to reconnect in one space that already contains so many dear memories, but is able to create new ones. I truly believe that Lori does not only have historic monuments to preserve like Harpat or Sanain. I also do strongly believe that it has landscapes, towns, and infrastructures. Those first life is maybe over, but the second one has not been imagined yet. I just think we need to learn how to read spaces differently, how to see potential where we see abandonment, and how to see value where we see dysfunction. Because nothing truly starts from zero, not places, nor people. And the question is not how to start it all over again, but how to continue with what we already have. Thank you.